Hi there, Steve here again, continuing on my Korean challenge. Today I want to talk about the importance of content with reference to some of the questions that I saw in response to my last video or my recent videos. Again, if you enjoy these, please subscribe to my channel. Also, the conversation that I had with Hannah yesterday, I looked at the recording of it. There was some static. We used a new microphone, so we may not be able to use that, and I will do another one in Korean for those of you who are interested in seeing my progress in speaking Korean. But, content, to my mind, interesting content, whatever interests you, to me is the vital motor driving us to learn the language, because we want to speak to people, we want to follow events on the news, we want to, whatever it might be, it's our interest that drives us. Rather than the sort of deliberate, at least to me, deliberate sort of learning the details of the language, it's rather my interest in something else, and by pursuing that, I acquire the language, because to just learn the grammar rules and so forth, after a while you're building in, a castle in the sand, in my opinion. It's, in fact, you have to maintain and sustain so much involvement with the language that you need that interest to keep you going. So, having said that, there were some interesting comments which I'm going to read here. One Heart Nihon says asked me why I think fluency is achieved mainly through speaking. Because fluency typically describes not your reading skill, not your writing skill or your listening comprehension skill. It describes your ability to speak. That's how we measure it. Now, you need the reading skill, you need the listening skill in order to achieve fluency, because you need to understand what people are saying. But to actually speak fluently, you need to practice. You need to speak a lot. In my own case, I prefer to speak more once I've acquired more words and have a better ability to comprehend. Some people like to start speaking early. Whatever people want to do, that's fine. But ultimately, at some point, you need to speak a lot, because you need to practice that skill if you want to be considered fluent. And we went through the definition of fluency. Then someone also said that they are not very interested in Esperanto because they didn't like the people or there was no culture behind it. I am also not interested in Esperanto, but those people who are interested in Esperanto, full marks to them. Whatever people are interested in, I expect the same respect back, that if I say I'm not interested in Esperanto, the Esperantists should also respect that. It's a matter of pursuing your interests. And then I had a comment here. Dave here says, I don't understand why you tackle texts way beyond your level. You're just reading complicated text through the medium of English. I don't know what that means. Actually, I'm getting used to Korean. I don't think there's any real merit in that, apart from it bolstering up. Bolstering is enough, actually. Bolstering up your own ego in that you are reading something highbrow. I don't think political conversations on this Shisa, whatever it was called, Sektarun Shison, is highbrow. If you were in Korea, then surely you'd have to learn more functional language and do away with all the political discussions. If anything, it's very difficult to steer conversations in that direction in any language. People simply aren't that interested in having long debates, nor are they particularly knowledgeable, says Dave. And there's even a person there who supports him, gives him a 1 thumb up. Dave continues, Steve is in a privileged position that he will never have to step outside his comfort zone. Never. If he had to move to Korea, then he could choose who he interacts with, choose where he wants to live, because he has the wealth behind him. It's not to say I don't admire him. Evidently, he clearly is a self-made man. All I'm saying is that Steve's perspective is from a wealthy retired businessman. He doesn't have to live the struggle of finding work in the country, dealing with all the bureaucracy or setting up a bank account in that country, and he wouldn't have to use the language for these situations. Those that are generally pressed to communicate do better than those living in a homemade language bubble of podcasts and novels. Wow, Dave, what is all that about? Whatever interests people in learning a language, they should pursue. I don't know German rock, Hammerstein or Mannerheim or whatever. There's some Rammstein or something. Lots of people talk about this German rock group that turns their crank, makes them keen to learn German. Good for them. I have zero interest in that. People learn Japanese because they're interested in anime. People learn Korean because they're interested in Korean drama. I can go on and on. For what I was motivated to read the Russian novels in the original Russian. That was my initial motivation. Whatever motivates people, highbrow, lowbrow, it doesn't matter. It's whatever your interests are. That's point number one. So I happen to be interested in politics and history. So therefore, I enjoy these podcasts. I understand them when I read them. I don't understand them particularly well when I listen to them. I understand them better and better. I am motivated because it's natural conversation and I like the voices. So it's what turns my crank. How can that make Dave upset? I don't understand. It's not elitist. And then he feels sorry for himself because he lives in Korea. I mean, he doesn't spend the day dealing with bureaucracy or setting up bank accounts. And I lived in Japan and I lived in France, and there I had to do those things in the language. I never felt sorry for myself. In fact, it's an advantage because all of those situations are also content. It's a learning environment. The first time you go, like I studied my Russian, I went to St. Petersburg, went to the train station, thought I could ask for how to buy a ticket to go to Viborg, and the lady behind the counter came at me with a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't know what she was saying. But the second, third, fourth time that I would face that situation, that context, I would be comfortable, because you have to get used to, whether it be listening to political content or buying something in a store or buying a ticket at the train station or dealing with bureaucracy. Those are situations where if you hadn't had them before, if you haven't had them before, you'll find them difficult, and then you get used to them. You get used to them to the point where you can even anticipate what people are going to say to you, so you're ready with your answers. And so having that experience is great. If I lived in Korea, or when I visited Korea, I had the same. I went into the subways to try to use their subways, and there's some complicated system where you get a deposit and stuff, and I couldn't understand. I asked the employee of the subway there, and he explained to me a mile a minute. I didn't understand a word he was saying. But after a while, I spoke to some Koreans. I figured out what their system was. And the next time around, I'll be better equipped to handle that situation. I don't see why that's a problem. This whole idea that we all have to be interested in the same thing, we all have to have the same opinion. We don't have to have the same opinion. That's part of the problem. I noticed this when I attended, I've mentioned this before, this conference on dialoguing here in Vancouver, run by the Simon Fraser University. They have a program for dialoguing. The whole idea of dialoguing is that everybody should feel the same way. Well, no, how about we disagree? How about we have different opinions and respect different opinions and defend our opinions, and rather than taking down other people's opinions. And whether I'm a wealthy retired businessman or not has nothing to do with it. My homemade language bubble of podcasts and novels. I don't live in Korea. I can go to the Korean supermarket, and I do. I go to the Korean bookstore, I go to Korean restaurants, and I try to engage them in Korean. Sometimes they answer in Korean, sometimes they answer in English. So, I'm just amazed that someone would come out with this sort of, anti-elitist, anti-retired businessman. Woe is me, I live in Korea. And this other thing, that no one talks politics. Lots of people are interested in politics. This podcast that I listen to, there's like 4 or 5 interviews every day with transcript. Somebody's listening to those. Those are popular podcasts in Korea. Now, somebody talks politics. Not everybody has to talk politics. I think it's good to talk politics. People should be interested in how they're being governed. It affects lots in their lives. Life isn't spent entirely setting up bank accounts and dealing with bureaucracy. So I just find this whole thing amazing, and I reiterate that finding content of interest. For example, in learning Korean, I cannot listen to simple content where people talk about 3 different ways of saying something, or what's the difference between this expression and that expression, and 5 minutes are on this subject with a lot of false laughter and false joviality and English and stuff. I can't listen to those things. But other people love them because they're easier, because they're comfortable. Fine. My preference is to listen to something that I sense is interesting to me. I don't fully understand it, and I'm motivated to try to understand it. What's wrong with that? So again, I just maybe got off on a bit of a tangent here, but it's amazing to me that people think the way this Dave fellow does, and that there are people who come in and give him a thumbs up. So there you have it. I expect to hear back from Dave. And pursue whatever interests you. in the language or in something else. Bye for now.